Right, gents. This feels a little nostalgic to a certain extent, right? We walked a little journey here, and Russell and I started this thing, and we added Nkululeko into some of our conversations, and it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant having you both on the podcast with me, chatting about some of these things around South African cricket, and it's been very surreal, right? Like we've made some brave and bold statements at times. We've maybe pushed some boundaries a little bit. We've pushed some buttons potentially out there. But it's been very surreal in the sense that a lot of what we spoke in the end was vindicated in some way, or in the end showed itself, right? So and it's not like to give a pat on our backs, right? I don't think that's why any of us are here, but it's almost to say like there's an understanding for me that the three of us collectively have sort of cultivated amongst each other, because I've learned from both of you so much over this, right? Without maybe stating it plainly and obviously the whole time through, but I have so many new awarenesses for myself around South African cricket, where we're at, where we can go, where our big gaps are, where we need to move to, right? And I thank you at the outset of this conversation, right? Russell, I thank you for like pushing on me to do this. We wanted to do it last year at the World Cup, and we never quite managed it. And, so just at the outset, before we get into like unwrapping this or wrapping up this thing, just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to the two of you. Thank you for your openness in hearing my thoughts, and thanks for sharing yours so freely, even if at times we were like, shucks, should we get this episode out? Questioning that a little bit. And in spite of that, we just said, let's do this, right? It's better to speak our truth than to not do that, because that is what happens so much in South Africa. People don't speak their truth. They're not willing to hear each other. And so thank you to both of you for that, yeah, so to get us into this conversation, the little wrap up, I just want to know, right? I'm really curious, because I see that there's this big concerted effort. And I say that because I know the director of cricket at Cricket South Africa, Enoch, fairly well. And I know his philosophy and his heart and where it's at and what he would want to achieve, right? And I saw a post over the weekend of Eddie Khoza, the cricket services manager at Cricket South Africa, at the KFC mini cricket seminar. And KFC is essentially, for those people who don't know who's listening in, it's the grassroots of South African cricket. It's the cricket that gets played with a softball right at the bottom there. It's where the passion for this game can get ignited for so many. And he sort of put a quote with that speaks to the idea. I can't remember the quote. I don't know who it's about, but it speaks to the idea that almost like the past is the past. It's time to have a vision for the future and move to that. And that's what I think echoes what I think Enoch would be thinking. It would share his sentiments, right? And so I see that, right? I can see that there's this effort. You hear a Marco Jansen sort of speak about that he's too young, for some of the stuff of South African cricket's past. And I think that's all fair and good, right? But then I'm really curious, what do we then now call 64 of 38 needed, 30 of 30 needed, 25 of 24 needed, Klaasen set at the crease, Miller still to come, or I think he might have been in already, and then you lose? What do you call that? Because 15 years ago, it was called a choke. It was the label, "You're chokers," that was placed on us for exactly that. We're in a winning position. The performance coach of South Africa at this point in time, in sort of his own words, a choke is when you're in a winning position and then you don't get it over the line. So what do we now call that, right? If there is this effort, you hear the players say, we're proud of what we achieved. We went one step further. But now what, right? Because essentially the behavior hasn't changed. It hasn't really shifted on. We've done all these things potentially different. We've hired a coaching staff to get us the W, but the behavior hasn't shifted. It's still the same. Right. That's my introduction. Russell, I see your hands ready to go.
Yeah, thanks so very much, Jody. Let me just quickly reiterate what you just said earlier. Thanks so much for your, for your willingness and the brave leadership that you've shown in the way you've conducted this whole engagement. I want to, rechannel that energy and say thanks for you as well. It was awesome just to have this conversation. And I think I reminded of the Moneyball, quote where it says, the ones who go through the wall first get the bloodiest at times. And we were brave enough to kind of put ourselves out there because we know that we're creating pathways for the future, and so thank you for that as well. I think to answer your question, if we're going to kickstart a conversation, I'm just going to make one phrase type of thing, and we can look at the particular cricket stuff in the final, in particular as it unfolded. A lot of what has unfolded was, we even went as far as saying in the last two conversations back, where we felt like they may have untagged themselves, and we questioned that. Is it an untagging, right? But at the same time, I feel like a lot of these things were always threatening to come back and to expose ourselves consistently as this choker. And we were under no illusions from day one that we needed to lift the covers. And this is why we labeled this talks lifting the covers, because there were always something beneath the covers that was threatening to sabotage us. And a lot of it is self-inflicted, whether we were consciously aware of it or not. Or some of the other things is just mindlessness, where we're actually dismissing some of the things that are definitely going to have a negative effect on us. And it comes through when pressurized situations like the end of the game in the final surfaces, and therefore we start questioning everything as a result of it. But if we were preemptive enough and mature or proactive enough, we should actually be doing these introspections now while we have the time, not under pressurized situations or when we feel flat and disappointed, disheartened because of that loss of victory, So it is definitely a misnomer, as it was one state, the whole chokers thing. And I think clearly that this misnomer has caused a relapse now with the final. So people are questioning left, right, and center, and there's this mixed assumptions of, are we chokers? Are we not chokers? Has this particular game been a choke? Or, is it maybe just added pressure? What is it? But realistically, as you're saying, choking is still nonetheless there as an issue. And for me, unless you go delve deeper when it's safe to do so and find genuine sincerity in approach where all heads can be put together, you're not necessarily going to resolve this thing just by wishing it away and say, let's the past be the past and let's move on. It's almost like a generational curse in a way on us. So we're going to need to address it with switching the lights on and being conscious or intentional about it. It's not going to just disappear. So that's just my way of seeing it. I'll hand over to you guys to talk specifics around the game itself. And particularly, I think the advocate would want to say that.
Yeah. I don't know. Any initial thoughts?
Yes, Jody, thanks for inviting me to come and join you guys here. I've quite thoroughly enjoyed it. Look, I've thought a lot about, the context of the game, 30 from 30 and then 25 from 24. With 4 wickets down and you still have another 6 or 5 wickets in the hut. I think if I was there being in a team and we're in that situation, I'm expecting a win, if I must be honest. I know we sometimes say winning is not the end all and be all, but at the same time, like we said, is that unfortunately, I mean, you and I, we are coaches. Coaches, we're going to get judged by how we can get the team to win. That's just the reality. Now, in South Africa, we like revolutionary outcomes without taking the steps to getting there, the revolutionary steps. So it's almost like we want to go from ground floor to the top floor with an elevator. We don't want to walk the steps it takes to getting there. And that's why all the time I always spoke about systemic things, you see? Because the truth in the greater scheme of life, the difference between the two teams was 7 runs. So it doesn't necessarily mean the Proteas are a worse team than India. It was just 7 runs. But I've learned in cricket, you don't even have to dominate the whole game in cricket, but you need to dominate the key moments in the game. So India actually was able to dominate the key moments in the game. Just like when the Proteas dominated key moments in the games against the Netherlands, against Nepal, against Bangladesh, whatever. So that's the nature of the game, right? But systemically speaking now, if I look at it systemically, India's number 8 was Jadeja, right? Our number 7 is Marco Jansen. Now, when you look at the stats of the two guys, I know Jadeja is a more senior statesman. Marco's still up and coming, right? when you look at the stats of the two guys, Jadeja gives you more in terms of strike rate and average. You see what I'm saying? Now, that goes back to what I spoke about our systems. Is that, are we actually producing, at the very least, if we say we want to win, are we producing strong matchups? You know, there's a friend of mine from Trinidad who asked me, look, where's Themba Bavuma? And I said to him, like, well, he's in the 50 overs and the test side. He said, well, why did they remove him from the T20 side? I said to him that, look, his contemporaries are guys like Rohit Sharma. At some point, it was Shikha Dhawan, Brendan King, Evan Lewis, Chris Gale. If you look at the strike rates of those guys and his strike rate, if we look at it from a purely cricket perspective, it's a mismatch. You see? It doesn't mean the guy is not a good cricketer. It just means that there's something about our system where we haven't matched the rest of the world. Now, I remember when Carlos Brathwaite, when we were told to remember the name, Carlos Brathwaite batted at number 8 for West Indies. You see? So that's what I'm saying, is that systemically, I mean, even Rashid Khan bats number 8 for Afghanistan, you know? So we are actually not matching the rest of the world in terms of the trends that win you games. So again, that goes back to our system. Unfortunately, Rob Walter could only make wine with the grapes that he's got. And the grapes that he's got demand that Marco Jansen should bat at number 7, Maharaj at 8, you see? But if we had a system where we've empowered a lot of coaches, the grapes that Rob gets at the top level would allow him to have somebody as good as Romario Shepherd, who bats number 8 for West Indies, you see? Or Carlos Brathwaite, who batted at number 8 for West Indies, or Rashid Khan at least, who bats number 8 for Afghanistan, you see? Or Ravindra Jadeja, who bats at number 8 for India. So that's why now, actually, it's our system's fault. Why? Because now people are going to say the team choke, but I'm saying no. At number 7 was a guy like Marco Jansen, whereas India's number 7 was Hardik Pandya or Shivam Dube or something like that. Then the number 8 was Jadeja, you know? So I'm saying that actually we systemically, it's not one or two guys, it's not Miller's fault, it's not Lassen's fault. Our system created that. But again, we can't see that. We say things like, well, we are proud. Or that, you know what, at least it's better than not reaching the final. But it still hurts the players, because actually when you get knocked out, like in 2019, before exiting the group stages, you can at least make sense of that quicker, and you can say, damn, we need to go fix something. But when you are close yet so far, it can become more depressing, you know? So I think it revealed our system, that actually our system needs to improve itself. So I'll leave it at that for now.
You know, I think the thing that you raised there for me that sort of sits in the back of my head, that the bowler that Brathwaite hit, that was Stokes, right? Yeah, it was Stokes. And so if we talk about the system and the systemic nature of our system, and if I think of sort of the conversations we've had and the things we speak to and about and the things we're passionate about, I wonder, right? So Stokes got hit for those runs in a T20 World Cup game, right? I think it was, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was a final.
In the final, right? And it made them lose the final. It made them lose the final, right? But Stokes, I don't know what happens in English cricket. I don't know it that well. But something happened because it galvanized Stokes into a better player. It really did, right? And so I listened to somebody like Tom Brady, who I just saw a thing on Instagram yesterday. And he says, I always get asked this question about what was the best wins in my career. And I struggle to answer that question, he sort of says, you know, because it's not the wins that matter, it's the losses, right? And so you take that final loss of England with Stokes being hit like that. And I feel like that galvanized him to become a better cricketer, because then he went on to win Ashes, I think, after that. And he won a World Cup. And, you know, and so I see as an example that the loss of this actual humiliation really, you know, made him stronger. I see that, right? At the time, he most probably felt like an absolute idiot. Idiot being my word, right? Not his. And so I see that, right? I see that happening. where in South Africa, we've had these failures, right? And then, sorry, Tom Brady basically says, the failures make me stronger, right? They make me who I am. So he talks to his identity. When we listen to the South African cricket teams of the past and this current one, the words that they used is pain, gutted, hurt. Those are the three words that if you go through all our campaigns over the last couple of years, where we've had these similar type of experiences, whether we call it a choke now or not, they describe it in a similar way. Now, if you're pained, if you gutted, and if you're hurt, that leaves scars, right? And so Janssen came and said, I'm not scarred. I'm too young for this. And so I'm really curious, what is the effect of this, right? And what are we going to do? What is going to happen? Is there going to be a concerted effort in our country to say, this thing must make us stronger? How do we do that? We have this tendency in South Africa to say mental performance is if the player wants it. That tends to be the response, right? We don't get a mental performance coach into our environment here because, you know, the players, some of them are not comfortable with that. Well, do we get a strength and conditioning coach in because some players are not comfortable with that? Do we get a technical batting coach in because some players are not comfortable with that batting coach, right? What I know and understand about mental performance is I'm not for everyone. And it's good that way, right? My services, what I have to offer, the way I think about life, the way I think, isn't going to help every individual out there. So why is it okay to have a batting coach and a player must just accept this is my batting coach, but the player can't just accept this is my mental coach in the same way, right? And so we take mental performance and we treat it as something different, yet it is as key a pillar to performance as technical stuff, as skill stuff, as strength and conditioning, if not more so. Yet we treat it as this thing that, if the players want it, you know? And so I feel like I have more questions at this point in time. Like, what are we actually going to do? What are we actually going to do to make sure that we're not pained, gutted, hurt, right? That our system steps up and says, let's make everything that is essential to our performance. We've got the skill stuff in place. We've got the technical stuff. And maybe it is now time to get into this mental performance stuff and actually engage with that key pillar of performance in a healthier way. So that if we lose, right, we lose in a manner where we've given it our all, right? We lose in a manner where you can see these guys are coming out here and they are absolutely thumping it, right? They are, excuse my language, balls to the walls with us, right? And we lose. We can get stronger from that. But if it sort of seems like a bit of a wishy-washy loss to me, right? Because we were claiming the W. We were claiming the W. Where's my hand? We were claiming the W when 1 meter against Bangladesh would have made the difference. When 1 run against Nepal had us on the losing side. We were quick to sort of in the post-match stuff where it's the W. That's what matters. It's the W. Let's move on. We're bowling full tosses at Bangladesh at the back end of the innings, and we're going, yeah, we won because great catch on the boundary. And then as soon as in a final, David Miller gets a full toss, hits it too long, or gets caught with a good catch, we want him to start becoming contentious, especially in the public, around the validity of a catch and a boundary rope and all these sort of things, right? Like it shows again to what Russel often speaks about, the spirit in which we do things, right? We're happy to claim the win when it suits us. But when the shoe's on the other foot, when Mother Cricket takes care of herself, when you've not checked the boxes potentially, and we're not in the South African change room, we don't know how they spoke about these things, we don't really know how they thought about it, right? And I think we've reiterated that throughout these conversations. So some of these stuffs are assumptions, right? But if you're not, like let's say they didn't, if you're not taking care of certain things, then Mother Cricket takes care of herself at the end of the day, right? And for me, that is my overriding sort of thing about this World Cup, is that, yes, we got better at so many things, but in moments when we could have maybe had the right spirit, we weren't there with the right spirit. And because of that, there's an effect on what happens and what we get back from the game, what we get given by the game, right? It is be, do, have. The game gives you something. It's always going to give you something. If you come from that place of having, I want this win, I want this win, well, at some point in time, the game's going to say, well, you can't have that because you're not ready for it yet. You're not coming with the right spirit. You're not coming from a place of being, then doing, then having. You're coming from this place of just, it's just about the W. It's just about having stuff. We don't have to pay attention to how we go about things. We don't have to pay attention to how we carry ourselves, how we walk, how we talk. We don't, because you know what, mental performance and the soft skills and all these things, if we want to, we'll engage in it. We won't look at the spirit, our core, our nature within that deeply and shift that and transform that so that we can transform into the winners so that the cup actually just becomes a byproduct. We're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet. Russell?
Yeah, I love that, Jody. I think the Tom Brady thing is superb because what it speaks to is that deeper reality of knowing that the tough times, the challenges that make you into this substantial winner already. This is what we've been echoing all the time, right? I remember the incident in the game actually where the guys were winning the 8 out of 8 and they were just about getting over, but it was creating this false sense of security within the players. Now look at particularly this youngster now you're mentioning, Marco Jansen, for instance, publicly declaring he's too young to even figure out or even kind of remember or even associate himself with the choker. So this pressurized, succumbing to the pressure and all those sorts of things. However, this tough times has now, since you said it, he's the worst player in the final. So he would have had new scoring as a result of this thing now. So all of a sudden, from him publicly declaring that he has no sense of association or attachment to this, now there is now a brand new attachment of scoring on him for choking or playing poorly in the final and succumbing to the pressure, right? So all of a sudden, this history of ours has now resurfaced and become personalized to someone like him and others. Maybe it's even a rehash for someone like David Miller, who never got us over the line too many times in times like these, you know what I mean? Particularly to win things, right? So for me, Ian Bishop mentions during this thing, he says an hour from now, we'll know whether these successes that I've had, 8 out of 8, is actually galvanizing the team. Has it really galvanized the team? So they say, yes, we've done it successfully for 8 games like this. And it's developed this Tom Brady character, this whole sense of winner within mentality. And we've really come together and we're doing it for this just cause of stepping over the line now. Or is the old, the old repetitive type of narrative going to be at play again where we're going to fall short? And it's just that. That's the question there. Was it overcoming or was it we've been overcome by our previous scoring? And that's what we're sitting with now. We're sitting with this question the whole time. And this is what we were talking about, what I was foreseeing in the language, and we were highlighting also of a Markram, for instance. We're quietly confident. We are deeply hungry for these victories. It's not about the hunger or the will, the strong will to win. It's not about to win. It's not playing for victory. Those are the variables and the ups and downs, the sense of confidence we're taking from the games that are inconsistent, within the game. They are too much at play. You need to have something more of a sure ground, a foundation, not quicksand, something certain, which is what Tom Brady is referring to. So when they have that sort of phraseology, they're not playing from victory. They're still playing for victory. And that's where the head transformation needs to happen. And that's the flaw up front that we saw in their approach. And it was echoed strongly throughout this win, 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 win. So essentially, if you summarize this whole thing, 8 out of 8 was actually just a false sense of security, didn't really galvanize the team to get to the deeper core aspects of the identities being established, collectively or individually. And essentially, it was a setup for new scoring and a fall. They were actually building up a pedestal of breaking records and then fall hard and heavy flat from that pedestal, which was never secure. And now we have CSA that's actually applauding and celebrating that as wins, but you have people that are hurt, that are fractured, that are so fragile now as souls and as players that they can't even. You remember the 2015 World Cup, how long it took for them to get back from that. This is going to be a repeat. This is part 2. And we are not addressing those soft elements where we're being genuine heart to heart with these players and making sure that these relapse occasions will be stopped, created an intervention of sorts because it's their souls or these players welfares that are at stake here. We need to have that head transformation, play as winners, not to win. And for me, that's the biggest indictment, that this system is actually hurting these players and themselves, and they are celebrating the fact that they're creating these disparities.
Yeah.
I think.
Maybe just before he goes, because I don't know, my things might raise more points, right? But it's just, I think we're asking the wrong question, right? I have this idea and an understanding that, so it's two ideas, right? So it's the same thing, but two different areas to which we can focus as human beings. So the one is, the statement goes like this: the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life, right? And the other one is, the quality of your state determines the quality of your performance. Okay. And so if we think of this very simple idea, I don't think we're asking the right question at this point in time. I think even in our conversation so far, we're asking, I mean, I started it, right? Are we chokers or are we not? Essentially, that's not the right question to be asking. A better question, I'm not saying it's the right question, but a better question to potentially be asking is, who do we need to become in order to win? That's a way better question, because it alludes to the work that needs to be done. It alludes to the understanding of the be, do, have idea. It leads to so many other things, right? Who do we need to become? And that speaks to identity. So we heard the Proteas speak to their identity. We heard, I think it was Shamsi, and sort of there towards the back end of the tournament, speaking about, that's who we are. This is our identity. Well, then what does the final say about that, right? Is that identity fragile still, or is it well-rounded? Is it something that's newly discovered? Is it something that Tom, is he going to stay around? We don't know. Is it something that he's going to build on? I don't know. Like so many unknowns, right? But I think it's a better starting point is to say, who do we need to become? And I think when we answer this question, is there's a little bit more depth needed to it as just, oh, we need to become winners. And I know we've been echoing that a lot of the time, right? But it's maybe, who do we become in our quiet time? Who do we become at home? Who do we become in front of public? Who do we become on the field? Who do we become in the change room? Who do we become in front of cameras? Because the who do we become will transform how we speak in front of the camera. It'll transform what we say. So Tom Brady says the things he says because it's who I am. He doesn't speak that because it's not who he is. So there's an alignment between who he is on the field and who he's off the field. And unfortunately, and I think in part, this is what breaks my heart to a certain extent. And I'm not going to mention the examples here, but I will say I've got crystal clear examples of our elite cricketers on TV, on show, who are not authentic in their nature between what we see on TV and who they are off the field. And that's concerning, because there's not an alignment of the being of the person. There's not an alignment of the who-ness, right? And it leads me to think at times that cricketers can put up the persona, wear the mask. We've spoken about this, right? Wear the mask of the elite cricketer on the field, but it's not a resemblance of their authenticity. So they're not showing themselves. They're showing something different. And that stuff cracks under pressure because you've got nothing to stand on. You show yourself. You can be bravado, but if you're not bravado, then in the moment, you won't be that. It's as simple as that, because we kind of like default to that. And so, yeah, I've maybe said more than I wanted to say on it. I really just wanted to raise the idea of the question, right? That I think it's a better question to ask, like, who do we need to become in order to actually win? And then look in the mirror long and hard and this is at an individual level and at a team level. And so I don't know if there's time, right? Because half of our team is playing in the major leagues, which is starting in the US, right? Half of them are going to be there. They most probably within a day after the final got on a plane and flew to wherever they needed to fly to go join up with the team. Maybe they haven't yet because they're still wallowing in their stuff. Maybe they said, give me a couple of extra days, yeah, right? So maybe it's good for people to debrief and take a breather. But what, are we going to try and put the puzzle pieces together before the West Indies, which is now a test series? Is that where that's going to happen? It might not be relevant. It might not fit there, right? And so the best time for feedback, the best time to do any work is in the moment. So I wonder what happened afterwards. I wonder if there was a big debrief, right, guys? We've got to sit down and plot forward here. Like, let's get everything out on the table. Next morning, it's tough, it's hard, it's hurting, but we're going to be stronger for this. Like, really, like now, not down the line, not put a plaster on your scar first. No, we fucking laser treating this bad boy, and we're moving on, and we're building on some good sound foundations. I don't know, right? I don't know. Yeah, sorry. I know, rambling a little bit. My thanks.
Yes, you're right. I think the mental performance, because like you said, often we want a batting coach or a bowling coach. Sometimes you don't even have a spin bowling coach, but for some reason, the fast bowling coach is important. I think the mental performance, or rather the mental aspects, I always tell people, I said, your brain almost decides everything you do. So your brain decides what time to set your alarm, what to eat in the morning, which clothes to wear. Is it cold outside? Is it hot outside? Should I bring something warm? So your brain decides everything. Maybe some things are involuntary, like your breathing, for example, or blinking. But generally speaking, our brains determine everything that we are about to do. So in fact, our brains are part of the tools of creation. So it's thoughts, words, and deeds. Those things, they allow us to become co-creators. So we can create concepts, we can create things. Just like an architect, they first think about a particular building, whether it's the Empire State Building, whatever, or the Statue of Liberty, then with their mouths or whatever. So thought, word, deed. Then even if they don't communicate it with their word, but at least with their deed, they start to draw it down, and then it becomes a reality eventually. So it's important to work on making sure that our mindset, not just to what we do on the field, right? Our mindset about what you spoke about, who do we need to become? That needs to be more honest. So when we speak about reality, we're speaking about real unity. Is there genuine unity between what you are thinking, what you are doing, and what you are saying? Or are those things disconnected? Are you doing something that's different to what you are thinking? Is this thing that you are telling the media, is it just scripted? Is it like the way you were trained to speak? So I know for a fact, a lot of the things you've spoken about here, there are many people who work in a formal cricket environment who wouldn't be able to say it, but they agree with it. So they might WhatsApp me and say, wow, you guys are right, whatnot, blah, blah, blah. But then they are afraid to speak it out. So there's no real unity between what they are thinking, what they are saying, and what they are doing, right? So it's important for us to make sure that we are genuinely aligned. And when you said, who do we need to become? That we is a systemic we. It's not a we of like just the guys in the Proteas camp. I think people mustn't misunderstand what you are saying. That we that you asked about when you said, who do we need to become? You weren't talking about just the guys who are in the squad or just the...
I actually was. I actually was.
Okay, now if you were, I want us to broaden it.
I agree with you. I agree with you. You make it.
So, thanks for your honesty, but I want us to broaden that we. Because remember what I said, even if you are working there, you can only make wine with the grapes that you've got. So that we is everybody from the under-8 coach, right through. From the way we think, from the guy who cuts the grass at the stadium, from the CEO, everything. That we needs to be a collective we. You see? Because there's an ICC Champions Trophy coming up. Guess what? If Marco Jansen is injured, we're going to struggle to have an all-rounder option. I'm being honest. I'm not trying to be funny or whatever. So that we is actually, there's a lot of work that this bigger we needs to do. You understand? So yes, it's true. Who do we need to become? Because you know what I learned, Jody? Cricket teaches you life. In life, the smartest brains, people who studied at Harvard and Oxford, they couldn't predict the 2008, the recession. And the smartest brain couldn't predict this COVID thing, right? So cricket teaches you life. And in cricket, this is what I love about cricket. you could work very hard. That doesn't insulate you from having a bad match. It doesn't insulate you from having a bad match. Now, unfortunately, our bad match as South Africa happened to be the final. It would have been nice if it was one of the group stage matches, then we still make it through. If God was to give us just one bad match in the tournament, you see? So that my appeal is that we should make it a broader we, because guess what? When Aiden said that the Proteas will feel, what did he say? Pain, gutted, and something else.
Hurt.
What I want to tell us collectively, us and the listeners, right, is that there are many people in South African cricket who are at least pained and hurt. They might not be gutted. So people think it's always nice, the fact that maybe I'm overseas. It hurts me that in my own community, I'm unable to give back. So I'm on the other side of the world. It hurts me when I see talented kids in my township and I'm like, you know what? I'd like to help these guys, but unfortunately, Pick n Pay is not going to give me food for free because I'm helping somebody for free. I still need to pay for it, right? So there are many of us who are hurt, gutted, and whatever, pained. It's not just the guys who are in Barbados. So how do we as a system, if it's important for us to make sure we move that group of young men from being pained, gutted, and hurt, because that we are spoke about is a collective we, what are we, this collective, going to do to make sure that we as a collective are healed? So what decisions, because remember I said thought, word, and deed are the tools of creation. What thoughts are we going to have? And then what are we going to at least do, even if we don't say much, that's going to shift us, you know? Because I do think there is enough time for the players to be like, okay, if you guys had beaten India, would you be celebrating? The answer is yes. Okay, so get over it. It happened to us as a team, and that can happen. It happened to Stokes in our World Cup final. So those things can happen. I don't want any players to internalize too much. But I feel like the systemic we have a lot of work to do. It's actually us, the we, not the players, who, if we don't do something different, the players will go through the same thing all the time. So the way we are coaching, the way we are thinking, the way we appoint people, like what Russell said a few times ago, we are choosing people not because they are the who that we want, because they fit our budget. But the minute we have SA20, you'll see that even the coaches that thought that they are the who that we want, they don't feature in that. We now go and get coaches from outside because now there's a better budget, you see? So even the players, I told some of them, I said, don't think you are in the team because they want you. Maybe the guy they wanted costs more money, so they had to let that guy go and go for you. So rather improve your cricket so that in future, the system everywhere must want you, even county cricket, even IPL, you know? Yes. So we systemically have a lot to do. And there is nothing that is stopping us. It's just political will, you know? Yes, thanks.
Awesome. And I maybe just want to echo or just add a little tail onto what you say, because I think, and I get that you get where we're speaking, right? And so if we say we've got a lot to do, then I think the first thing that we've got to do is look at our beingness. And I think of, let's say you stand in the queue at a shopping center, okay, in South Africa, and there's a cashier behind the till, and something happens at the till with a person, say, that's buying something in front of you. What is your reaction or your behavior in that moment, right? Let's say they have their own little argument there, or all of a sudden the person doesn't have change, or, you know, what is your doing, say, in a moment like that, right? And so we can say we got a lot to do. So I got to do the right thing, yeah. And in South Africa, we often do that. We teach people to do the right thing, right? Not be the right thing, not be in a way that you're doing actually just is that thing. So some people in the queue might be very generous. It's in their nature to be generous. They're generous wherever they go. They're generous with their time. They're generous with their money. They're generous with everything. And so they might just overhear the conversation in the front of the till and hear, oh, it's a R5 issue. Yes, R5. Let's just go. It's all good. Don't worry about it. All right. Some people might be generous, but they don't have the finances. Right. And so when they get their chance at the till, they can blow up and say, listen, like this shouldn't be like this. Or they could go, you know what, it's not a problem, because it's just in their nature to be generous. Somebody else might be impatient. And so they're standing there and they start tapping their foot in their nature, in their beingness. And it's maybe not in their nature, it's in their beingness, because saying it's in your nature means you can't change it, right? It's who you are. It's not in our nature, it's in their beingness. They've been taught impatience. And so now they stand there and they tap their foot and they get agitated because time, and then they see there's somebody in the till next to them that's left, and then they run in there and they speak to that teller and they'll go, oh, geez, you guys must really be quicker. And these people that can't sort their lives, like, then that's what you're doing now. That's your behavior, right? Because it's where it's your beingness that's on show. And so I think if we say we've got to do work, there's a lot we've got to do. The first work we have to learn to do is the learning to do the work of the beingness, because then doing naturally flows from that. Because the person that's just generous doesn't have to remind themselves, oh, shucks, I think this is the moment to do the right thing here. They're just generous. They don't have to put on this mask of, I've got to be something that I'm not. So I just wanted to kind of like just throw that in there. Russell?
Jody, that's awesome. Thanks for that. I think that was very valuable if you unpack and look at that deeper. And I know we've spoken about these things before in previous podcasts, so people definitely need to have the flow of the conversation. We've rehashed it and we probably said it in different ways, which it's essential to do that, because that's where growth comes from, where insight, awakening, perception comes from. So, what you're saying also, I'm going to say in a different fashion. I think when we started our emerger back into international cricket, what we did was to sacrifice on the altar of doing and having. Basically, we were chasing the pot of gold. That's the have. And then we started saying, what do we need to do to have that, right? So on that altar, we sacrificed the being aspect, and we never considered who we need to be. And ever since then, we are facing the consequences of falling, sabotaging our success of being champions on that pursuit, which is consistently going down for 30 years now. And we have relegated this whole being aspect to not matter at all, particularly when it comes to cricket. So that deception is at play consistently. Therefore, guys like us who have a sense of awareness and appreciation for the being aspect is saying this is inevitable that you're going to fall flat in failure. And then they sit wondering, why are we not getting this? We're the world's best, we're most talented. We can do these things. We've got the talent and capacity, and we've done it before. Look at our record. We have the record. But the being is off. There's a fraud or a relegation of the being aspect. And by the way, what being is principles. It's soul. It's the soul aspect. When you sacrifice principles, you become this liar. You become this fraud, this make-believe. Because you're doing all these other things, but there's deception around it. And we kept saying, yeah, but just look there. Look, there's evidence enough here. We've got this outcome. Look at my CV. I've achieved these things. And that is not enough. The thing that keeps you in the space is the authenticity of what you're being. If you're a champion, whether you get the win or not, that is the key. That is the real winning. So our worldview or cricket worldview that we have been painting in the narrative for ourselves in South Africa, pursue the pot of gold, because then people can believe that we are champions and we ourselves can start believing it. It's backward. It's external to internal. You got to go inside out. There's even an inside out movie, an inside job. You have to go from the inside out, and it shows the relevance and importance. But yet in South Africa, our shallow attempt at kind of taking our head off by this, we completely not catching the heart of that. That's why at the stage I call it the soullessness of CSA, because they are perpetuating an approach of cricket with no soul, the sabotaging of principles. And we have no foundations. Principles is like pillars. They're foundations of how you can build success on. So if you just bring the success, it's going to be empty success. It doesn't matter. So this is why stuff happens. Like, for instance, we send what potentially a merit team, and the pressure is felt that this team must win, because they must go prove that we're successful. We do the right things and we can have it. And we have the script and the answers, and everyone has to follow this recipe. It's a fraud and an injustice, because you are really relegated. It doesn't matter what color you are. It's a sense of classism, or a sense of kind of blind lack of wisdom, right? Where you think you can sabotage or sacrifice the being or the soul aspect and you can get away with it. Life will not do that to you. It's not going to give you that sort of, because it's going to hurt you. It's going to cripple you if you have successes and you can't handle it, right? Because you're going to perpetuate that thing and scar and hurt people. Like my Finky was talking about, he's hurt. It's going to hurt a lot of people. So what we are doing is just actually coming against each other and blindly pursuing this win just for the sake of winning. And it's that paternalistic thing that's coming through. Sorry, I'm speaking a lot here, but the paternalism is the main thing that I decided to lift the covers on. My main focus is, and why this thing will always fall flat. If you look at paternalism, paternalistic nature says we're creating ranks and we're creating privileges and we're creating separation. And who we regard, where we put a label on and say, you more important. Doing and having is more important. And whoever falls into that category, whether you're white, colored, black, if you're going to be playing according to these cards, right, then you're part of our system. And then they sacrifice all the other people who have more wealth to offer. And then everyone gets judged on that paternalistic things, right? That paternalistic system, it's a wrong spirit. And therefore, the only just thing is for that thing to fall flat, completely dismantle. We wake up to the reality of it and we rebuild afresh on solid ground, not the quicksand, solid ground of principles as we re-emerge and shape the future of cricket for everyone. We make the game awesome. We play awesome cricket and we make the game awesome for everyone. And as long as they keep going with a shallow attempt to World Cup after World Cup after World Cup, I would want people to shout, and people should know, why are some people saying this team must fail? And then others say, no, let them win. Why? There are disparities. It's polarized. People in South Africa are saying, we want that team to fail and we want that team to win. Why is there such a clash? Why can't we support? Because there's something unjust at play. And these are some of the things, this paternalistic nature, the prejudice that is coming through our system from the way we started is consistently portrayed throughout our game. They are definitely prejudiced. It started off as racism, it went to classism, and it went to even more, concepts. It just evolves, but it's prejudice right through the system, and we are sacrificing souls in the process.
Yeah. I was thinking as we're talking, I think it was when Kuleko spoke a little bit earlier that I was sort of thinking about some of those early conversations we had around these things, right? And how, I mean, hey, if we won this thing, we would have sat here and had a different conversation highlighting these same points. I know this because we spoke about these things offline, right? And so I know that we said that, if they win it, if you listen to the untagged conversation, well, what if they win it, right? Well, then we still said that these problems need to be looked at, right? Because what are you building that success on, essentially, right? And so the fact that they lost it, it's sort of funny to be able to sit here and go think through my own thinking over the last period of time and how it shifted, right? And so there was a time when I started really thinking like, wow, they might actually be doing this. Wow. Wow. Like, look at them, right? It might not be great. It might be scruffy. It might be ugly. It might be, but they might. They might just, and no. And I think whether we won it or lost it, none of these issues or things would be different, right? And so I think I've got two more examples that I feel like I need to throw in the conversation. And I don't know if they're relevant or not, but so I often look at things and how they change and how they shift, right? To me, if I think of teams who've won, so if you look at the Indian team who've won this, I think their messaging from their captain and their players stayed consistent all the way through. I don't think there was big shifts in what they were doing, how they were looking, how they were walking, how they were talking. I think it was fairly consistent. And that's the thing that scared me about South Africa, that this felt like the first World Cup where they were actually fairly consistent all the way up to the semi-final. They were very consistent in talking a very similar language. It's not just one player, it's all of us, right? It's like, and that's good language to speak. And then you look at, and I know we spoke about sort of how down the team looks, like it almost look like there's no energy, like they're in their own little bubble, in their own little world. And it was almost a bit concerning because it's never been like that, right? And I thought, well, maybe they're hitting on something here. Maybe there's something that we don't know, but there's something happening there. Wow, they're winning. They're close games. They're getting them over the line. And then you get to the semi-final. And then all of a sudden, they're jumping up for joy after winning this thing. right? They like, it looks like they've won the World Cup. They're on each other's shoulders, smiles on their faces. Shamsy walking into the camera. We're going to Barbados, baby. Like, that was, for me, that was like red flag zone. I was like, huh? What's this? To turn that around, that emotional load, right? There was this intensity, this pressure, right? All the time. And they were bracing with it. And they were like there in it, and to me, holding it, right? Or I don't know if holding it's the right word, but they were up for it, right? They were succeeding at the challenge of it. And I felt my immediate, when I saw the reactions of the players to winning the semi-final, I thought, that's it, the bubble has burst, right? It is the surefire way for any performance to fall flat, is to shift focus. And if I say shift focus, you shift your focus at a couple of levels, but your thinking changes, and so your emotions changes, and so your behavior changes. And so behavior was visibly different, right? And behavior is an inside-out thing, like Russel just explained there beautifully. It's an inside-out thing, right? And so if all of a sudden I'm jumping for joy, where I've been looking like this focused robot, it says that something's different. And I always thought one of their biggest challenges would be to shift that energy. And I think Markram was asked about it in a press conference before the World Cup, and he sort of said, we're aware of it, and we are managing it, right? His words wasn't managing, he was using better words. Like, we're on top of it, essentially. My concern, though, was that all the way through the World Cup is with all this load on the emotional tension, win by a meter, win by one run. USA was a bit touch and go for a moment. They overcame that. Which was the other team that pushed us close. Netherlands could have gone either way, And so with all that tension, I always felt like if the foundation, and a lot of these things we've spoken about, the spirit, the principles, the beingness, if the foundation's not really in place, right, at some point in time, things will crumble. And it was my hope that they had it covered, right? It was my hope that they sort of worked through things, and they've managed to pick themselves up out of stuff and but as soon as that semi-final win came, that shifted. And then what was more concerning, like we spoke about meaning, and if we load too much meaning, perhaps they were good for just focusing on the skills. And so immediately when the semi-final was won, all of a sudden, a player rocks up and goes, hey, this is for the nation. This is to inspire and unite. And I think, Russel, you mentioned it right at the start of our conversation. Said it's like weird that this is not coming out of the camp. It's weird that they're not talking about this, right? And so we don't know. Maybe behind scenes they did. But as soon as you put something out there publicly, it gets a different energy. It creates a different stress on the shoulders, right? And so those two things, when you shift focus, if a batter gets into the 30s and they shift, they think something like, oh, I'm close to 50, they're screwed. It's when you have the ability to go, what gets you from 0 to 10 is good enough to get you from 10 to 20, is good enough to get you from 20 to 30. It's good enough to get you to 50. It's the sameness. It's the sameness that gets us there. And so I see too often in South African teams change. And the reason we change is because we don't know who we are. Because if you know who you are, you can show up, be that, do that, off you go. We don't know who we are, so we're ebbing and flowing. And this World Cup, the ebbing and flowing just came later to me. If it was there earlier, I think we would have lost games earlier. We were able to sustain the sameness for longer. And at the back end, it let us down because I think we don't know who we are yet. That's the last thing I have to say about this conversation. I think happy to hear Russel and Kaleko's final thoughts. Yeah.
Yes, gents. No, I think you guys have touched on very good points about that beingness that Jody spoke about, and how that beingness stems from a position of principle, like what Russel was saying. So the ebbs and flows that you speak about, and then suddenly there's a time where we are very focused, and there's a time where we are too complacent, like going from one almost extreme to the other. There's something Rahul Dravid said that really, I was like, wow, what an honest man. Rahul Dravid mentioned a quote from somebody who said, look, the reason why I want to climb Mount Everest, because it's there to be climbed. He said that guy didn't say I'm doing it for that one or for this one or to inspire that one. He said, no, since I'm in the final as a coach and my team is in the final, we might as well win the final. You know, I always tell my team that, look, we play every match like it's the first match of the tournament. Why should we change our minds just because the match is labeled a quarterfinal or a semi-final or a final? You know, play that match as if it's the final. But guess what else? I tell them. I always say that practice is a rehearsal of performance. That we are going to practice as if we are playing a final. Every time we practice, it's as if we're playing a final. So I don't want bowlers making jokes at the mark. I said, no. In a real big game, there's nobody to make jokes with you. That team, you might need to defend 12 runs from the last over. So if you have a habit of coming to training and joking around with your mate while you're waiting to bowl, you ain't preparing for the final. So it's basically, I'm echoing that thing of we must be who we want to be, but on an everyday basis, so much that it's just who we are. So much that the final and the first game of the tournament don't feel any different, right? So that's from a purely cricketing perspective. From the principles perspective that Russell said, because Russell is right. We are probably the only nation in the world where some people want the team to win, some people don't want it to win, which is an indicator, if we look through the microscope, that something is not right in that nation. I'm sure in New Zealand, there aren't people who are saying, we wish they crash out of the competition, and others saying, no, we wish they win. You see? Now, let me show you how that principle is being reflected in everyday life. The game after England, somebody wrote on Twitter that you see Otneil Bateman went for 17 runs at a crucial time. This shows that the quota system, we must get rid of it. So the same Otneil Bateman, by the way, I had a pleasure of playing with him for Southwestern Districts when he was extremely underpaid. I actually fought with the board to say, guys, this man has a family that is the breadwinner of. This is not right. I got crucified for some of the things I said, okay? So Otneil Bateman, I know his journey, okay? Anybody who watched the SA20, but not just that, who's watched Dolphins and other teams, knows that if we had a criteria, Otneil Bateman fits that criteria. We always said that we don't have a good death bowler. He's proven it. He just had 1 or 2 bad games. It's not a reason to crucify him. If that was Dale Steyn who had a bad game, the same person wasn't going to write about a quota system. But if that's not enough evidence, let me show you guys what else. Aiden Markram was praised for his captaincy, that he's an astute captain, which he is. He's a good technical leader, okay? But what happened to him is what could happen to any human being. In fact, it happened to Virat Kohli. He wasn't scoring runs. And that's largely because of the conditions they played in. Suddenly, the thing was that there was even an advertisement that, look, there's something special about this guy. As a captain, South Africa in 19 won 10 years ago, then a 19 World Cup. Then Sunrisers Eastern Cape won because of his captaincy. Then he captained 2 out of 2 matches in last year's World Cup, and they both won. And now they've won 7 out of 7, and now we're going to the final to win the 8th. Now, let's be honest. What happened in the World Cup that Bavuma was captaining? People said plain out that, no, being a good captain alone is not enough. You need to also have runs. So can you see we don't have principle as a nation? So what's good for the goose is never good for the gander as a nation. So that's why that thing is reflected in who wants the team to win, who wants the team to do badly. Because even Bafana, when they went to African Cup of Nations, the day before the Morocco game, somebody on Twitter said, in fact, it was some account. I remember the account. There's a rumor that it's a DAMP's fake account. It said that, well, Morocco's going to smash these guys, you know. They are useless. And then when Morocco beat Bafana, I tagged that account and said, ta-da, surprise, you know. So can you see that even in sports like soccer, there's a part of the nation that wants the soccer team to do well, but there's another part of the nation that wants it to lose. So there's something not right with South Africa. And it reminds me of, if you speak to historians, they said that the reason why South Africa was boycotted is because South Africans and the world, right, said that we can't have normal sport in an abnormal society. So maybe the fact that some people in South Africa want the team to lose and some people want it to win is showing that something is abnormal in that country. So it's showing things that beyond the cricket field. Something is abnormal. But also the fact that one captain can do badly with the bat and the other captain can do badly with the bat. But the one captain will be told that no, but at least he's a good captain. But for the other one, if we are told, hey, they're doing well, they're going to the semi-final, he's a good captain, we are told that that's not good enough. You see? So there's a lot we need to do. That's why I said that we that you spoke about, of what we need to do, is an entire collective we. And that's why my first podcast with you guys, I told you that some of the problems that are haunting South African cricket are bigger than just the cricket on the field. They are problems that have to do with, if the same guy who said that about Othniel Bartman was a CEO and was looking for a bowling coach, maybe they would still have a bias if Othniel Bartman applied to be the bowling coach and if Nandri Berger applied. You see? So there might even be things that haunt Othniel beyond even the playing days, even after retirement, how he's perceived. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a lot we need to work on. But again, it goes back to, do we have the who that fits our why or our what? Because not everybody, whether they black, white, or colored, are necessarily a good character by default. There will be good and bad characters. So our biggest challenge now is to find the right characters that fit this movie that we want in the future. That future is not far away. It's the ICC Champions Trophy. And then there's a 2026 World Cup. Then there's a 2027 World Cup.
In South Africa.
Yes. So that future seems far away, but it's actually not. So I'm quite excited to see what the next step is. And remember what I said to you guys, whether we won or lost this World Cup would not change those principles that Russell spoke about and that I've highlighted. And those are the things that, it's because of those principles why some people feel like, you know what, it doesn't matter how hardworking I am. I don't think this coach can see my brilliance. Maybe if that coach wasn't a cricketer, they would be the ones writing that we must get rid of the quota system because Othniel Bartman went for 17 runs. But about Marco Jansen, we are saying, well, he's still young, he's still learning. You see? So there's always different strokes for different folks. So there's a lot we need to work on, not just on the field, but more especially beyond the field, because the off-the-field decisions we take in boardrooms, when it comes to how we coach, blah, 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 those things affect what happens on the field. That's why I said that your mind affects everything you do. Thanks.
Yeah. Just one point on Markram that I see Russell wants to say something, but just very quickly, that I think is important, right? To highlight, again, just what we do and how we work as human beings. We have biases, right? And so that ad was great, but it didn't speak about his IPL, his recent one, where he was the captain of Sunrisers, I think, if I recall. And in the end, he didn't play. He wasn't in the team, right? And so, or he was sort of dropped at times and back in, whatever it was. I don't have all the details. And so we can find evidence to validate the points we're trying to make, or we can seek the truth. And the truth could be many things, right? We've spoken about some things which we believe are our truths. And there could be more opinions and more thoughts that's different, that has also got a level of truth out there. And so I think what I'm hoping people get out of these conversations is to seek the truth, not just your truth, not just your biases, to do your best to lift your own covers, essentially, you know, to seek what's underneath and to see what is there and what is actually influencing and affecting, you know. Yeah. Russell?
Yeah, I think the point you make also, just to, before I answer my segment, the Markram was also dropped from the captaincy from Sunrisers Hyderabad, so he was actually axed. So his leadership was maybe applaudable under South African conditions in terms of South African climate, which, you know, if you want to say it plainly, it's a majority white cultured aspect of leadership, right? If you want to just say it that way, or what we've been sold all the years. And when it came to him being under leadership of an international team, not to say that SA20 is not international, but it's still within the South African context. But as soon as it goes to Indian markets, it becomes their narrative, their culture. You understand? So he wasn't successful, and they saw that, and they axed him from it, and they gave it over to another champion in Pat Cummins. So that's another angle that doesn't come through the media, in a sense, regarding the leadership. But again, those disparities of, as a captain, Hansie Cronje was a great captain, but he didn't perform with the bat, and they said he was the best. captain, but yet there was other underlining things that played then, and it caught up with the, you know, it kind of gave us embarrassing experience as a nation. So those are always some things that we have to look at, and if we want to look at deeper and under the covers, we need to look at it in a balanced fashion. And so that's the main thing. What I wanted to emphasize, which came out beautifully through in summation of what we're saying, Jody, you spoke about the question, a better question. And I think the phraseology used is, who would we want to become? I think that's a phrase. Is that how you said it, right?
Yeah. Who do we need to become?
Who do we need to become?
Yeah.
So if you ask that question, they have it the reverse. And here's a clear example. They started out, Rob Walter came into the position, and in Cape Town, they have this phraseology amongst the colored people. I think they say it, I don't know if you know what Mafinki, they call it, "Jy rob," right? "Jy rob," you're robbing, you're cheating, you're fraudulent of something, right? It's a phraseology that they use. Basically, and his name is ironically Rob, so he's actually saying, "Jy rob," you know, they're robbing something. But when Rob came into it, his impression or his suggestion was that he's going to come in, and the objective and the mandate and the mantle he's been given is to go and inspire and unite. One person, one solitary person cannot do that. We did the same thing with Mandela. You say Mandela is our hero and he liberated us. It can't be one person to liberate a nation from an oppression. It's a lot of people collectively playing that part. So you can't assume that one person is going to be the savior of the game of South Africa or whatever, right? So that's the fallacy and the folly in this. He came in with that mantle assignment and saying, okay, go get your crew, go get the people who's going to go and inspire you tonight. But it's the reverse. You can't play cricket matches or play sport. This is a narrative we've been sold. If we win a World Cup, we're going to unify this nation. We've won 4 rugby World Cups, and we said this before, and it really hasn't changed our unequal society or unjust narratives that are perpetuating. There are still people in South Africa who are supporting the All Blacks ahead of the Springboks, despite the Springboks being the only country to have won 4 and 2 successive back-to-back World Cups. Right? It's the same within the cricket. You cannot inspire and unite a nation. Even that narrative is the other way around. You first united, and then potentially, because of your unification, it leads to an inspired approach. What you've nailed earlier is that instead of the cricket inspiring and uniting, we should find ourselves in our systems. What do we want to become? We find ourselves to put things together that makes us feel united, right? Makes us feel united and inspired to be together, and then go to World Cups expressing the fact that we are already united and already inspired, and go do that. It must be an outflow of victory we're already experiencing daily, and then we go to World Cups, go and express that. If we get over the line, it's a confirmation of what we already know. If we don't get over the line, we're still winners, we're still united, we're still inspired. So it is the job of CSA, as we're talking about the sippy cupping. You're sippy cupping, but you haven't got the worthiness of drinking from this cup, because you are not already inspirational as an entity, as a system. You're not already united as a system. So your flagship team is trying to do something to create an impression that we're united and we're inspired. We're not. You have to first get united, first be inspired, and collectively we go and express that. Then we can drink from this cup, because we'll confirm. BCCI can pat themselves on the back to say we're the best in the world, because we've done all we can to throw all forms of resources and support at our players, and we should be the best in the world repetitively because of all the energy we put towards it. The fact that it was an enigma for them to get over the line suggests that there was something under the current that wasn't quite right. And seemingly in the reverse, back in the day, the Australians got all those systemic stuff right, because they got the most trophies. I think it's 10 in total at the moment, right? So that system suggests that there's something that's right, because there's confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. So first, we need to be united and inspired, and go and do those things that united and inspired people do. That's what we need to become. And then we do it. And then maybe at the right time, we'll have the evidence, like the cup, that confirms that we're already that.
Russell, I think that's a great place to wrap up this conversation, because I think, if I think of how I normally record podcasts, just individual podcasts, there's normally a start, and by the end of the conversation, we put like a little bow on it. It's almost like we return to where we started, right? And I feel like all those words is an exact echoing, essentially, of where this whole conversation started in our very, very first one. You know, I just, from my side, I just want to again say thank you to you both, right? Like, even today's conversation has been enlightening to a certain extent, and just reminds me of some of the things I can do as an individual, wherever I am, right? To come from that place of within, not the place from without, not just seeking the glory and the fame and the benefit to me, you know, but to do more work on who I want to be and how I want to experience life and how I want to go about life. And then let the things, and let life surprise me on all the beauty it wants to give me through the things that I then do, you know. And so I thank you. I thank you both for some wonderful conversations. And hey, people don't know this, but we've had even more in-depth conversations behind the scenes, right? We've spent hours together to record a couple of episodes. I think I've had a phone call with Nkululeko one night in the middle of the night at 12 o'clock. We phoned each other, and you know, and so yeah, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And for everybody who's been following along, right, keep lifting the covers in your own areas. Right. If you found any resonance with anything that we're saying, please share this stuff, right? Please tell people, here's a series of conversations that might just make you think a little bit differently in your area, in your work, in your job, as a parent, as a coach, as a whatever, right? Here's something that we've built essentially with this intention of lifting the covers, to help others lift the covers, to show that we can have these types of conversations. We don't have to be afraid of them, to show that we can be brave, right? And I think you said earlier to me, I'm brave. And in the moment, my head was like, no, I'm not brave. This is just like, to me, I'm just doing what I feel I need to do, right? I didn't see it as brave. But other people's might call it that, right? And so, like, if we're not, in my mind, if we're not, and I think what you said right towards the end here about this disparity, I think it was in Nkululeko that was explaining about half the country wants us to win and half the country wants us to lose. It's such a clear indication of, we're not there yet, right? You can't say, I want to inspire and unite the country when half the country don't want you to win. Like how, right? Half the country's not even turning on their TVs to watch you. Half the country don't even care. I spoke with so many people back in South Africa. It was just like, nah, whatever. You know, it's like why bother? And so the inspiration and the uniting won't come. I think, Russel, you said it beautifully. You know, unless it's something we consciously do first, right? Maybe my final example would be, I was a private coach for a very long time in South Africa, and the private cricket coach is the pariah of South African cricket. They're not included. It's not a good thing on your CV in terms of if you want to apply for jobs. It's a little bit frowned upon. You're seen as somebody that's robbing the system because you're making money out of the system. And so you're not included. You're not included into email lists. You're not included into contact from your union, you know. And so there's a great place for anybody who's listening to a cricket union. There's a great place to start. I'm not a private coach anymore, but that would be a great place to start, is to get your private coaches in your area who are developing talent, maybe more so than people at schools, etc., because the teachers don't have time, to include them into what you're doing, to bring them all closer together, inspire and unite just in your immediate environment. If you're at a club, you know, do things that's more inspirational and unites just your community rather than pull that apart, you know. And so I'm hoping that these conversations can help people have these types of ideas, can help us come together a little bit better, so that a team doesn't go to the World Cup feeling like they need to do that, feeling like that's their job. No, that's not your job. Your job is to go play cricket, you know, and go do that to the best of your ability. My job might be to be the best mental coach I can be. Russell's job might be to be the best team catalyst, and Nkululeko the best cricket coach. That's our jobs. Our job's not to win trophy. Our job's to go develop people, and then develop their talents. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit again, but it's been a wonderful journey. I'm a little bit sad that it's come to sort of an end for now, and who knows where it takes us in the future. But from the bottom of my heart, really grateful. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you to everyone listening in. That's it. I'm done. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yes, thanks a lot, guys. That's it. I've got no more words. Thank you so much, and then thanks to the listeners. Thanks a lot. Take care.
It was a good journey. We lifted the covers, but there's obviously benefit from lifting it. So we keep trotting along together, stronger together, and let's keep moving forward.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thanks, gents.
Cheers.